Well, Nathan, members of Knesset, in the spirit of Minister Edelstein's call to fight ignorance, I'm here to debunk a myth, a dangerous and false myth that has taken hold in some places, namely that the government of Israel as such is against the changes, is against the spirit of change in our region, in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the Arab world. The truth is more complicated. It's true that there's a sense of worry, and there was certainly a sense of deep concern as the drama unfolded. It's true, and it's legitimate, there was more than a tinge of sympathy and pain for the fate of President Mubarak, who for many years has been at least the custodian of a stable peace relationship with Israel. But it's also true that within the Israeli government at the highest level, there is also more than a tinge of sympathy and understanding for the democratic spirit moving parts of the Arab world. And I think it's not a secret that the co-author, or if I may say the assistant in the writing of the book that Dan Dijker has just shown us, is very much at the Prime Minister's elbow. And so what we do have to be very mindful of is the need for all of us here to be very careful, very cautious, and very sober about what we say and what we do, about what's happening around us. We have to bear in mind that in a world where legends about Israel, vicious legends about Israel, have a hold on the public mind, not every Arab liberal or Democrats want to be seen in public with what they call the arm of the Zionist octopus on his shoulder. In countries where they believe that we send trained sharks to eat their tourists, it's not necessarily a helpful thing for Israel to actually embrace even developments which we see as positive. What we have to be is mindful of the old saying. We remember that God gave us the power to change what we can, the wisdom to adjust to what we cannot, the courage to adjust to what we cannot change, and the wisdom to tell one from the other. Now, when we look at the landscape as it is changing, and I will not go here into the discussion whether this is the Arab Spring or the regional earthquake. As the landscape changes, there are a number of forces at play. I will touch upon aspects of policy that we see as relevant to each one of them. Yes, there are liberal forces out there. My training as a historian of modern Egyptian history reminds me that they were there in the 40s and 30s and 20s and could have offered a different future if the furies of the Cold War did not sweep all of this away in the 50s. So what we saw in Tahrir Square was not necessarily a birth, but a rebirth of an idea. What they need in support of their purposes is the spirit of economic initiative. And when the Prime Minister spoke, as did other leaders in the Mediterranean, like Foreign Minister Frattini of Italy, about a Marshall Plan, of course we understand that the years where the West could spend billions of dollars the way they did in the 40s to shore up democracy in Western Europe are no longer relevant. But support for economic initiative, the ideas about securing investment and encouraging people to take risks on behalf of this new emerging landscape, political landscape, this is something that Israel strongly supports. We also are mindful of the role of the militaries in the transition in one respect, that military institutions in our neighboring countries are very often the best repositories of the memory of the catastrophes and the cost of war, and therefore at the transition phase they are important and useful custodians of the necessity of peace. But if we read that in our neighboring country, Egypt, a two-thirds majority is opposed to the abandonment of the peace treaty, then this is a very good sign that this goes beyond the military establishment. But in the transition, they are important. And very quickly, finally, the enemies of a successful transition are what is very often referred to as Islamist fundamentalists. I would not use this term, which is a compliment in a sense. They do not represent the fundamentals of their religion. They represent a modern totalitarian perversion of religion. And finally, in a recent meeting with an American Jewish organization, one which I happen to be rather familiar with, the conversation turned to the problem of cant, that is to say, sanctimonious nonsense that surrounds the discussion on the Palestinian situation. And since Kant was mentioned, the English word Kant, by association also the name of Immanuel Kant came up. And what the Prime Minister immediately said is, he is our teacher about the difference between the peace of deterrence, which has been our lot for many years, and democratic peace, which is what we would hope for, but we are very sober about its prospects in the immediate future. Thank you.